Let's see, hopefully this works. Okay. Hi, everyone. I know it's early, but thank you guys for being here. I'm Mahi, and I'm an incoming freshman at the University of Pennsylvania. I debated for 4 years at the University of Chicago Lab School. That's where I went to high school, and I was both a 2N and a 2A. And I am going to tell you guys a little bit about speaking and ethos today. So feel free to just jump in and interrupt me whenever. If you have questions about speaking ethos, or if you just have other debate questions generally. Okay. I guess this is going to be like the outline for the lecture. If you're taking notes, this is how I would break it up. I'm going to start with like, why speaking, why ethos, like why does it matter? I'm going to do the second section is going to be ways to boost your ethos in around outside of speaking. The third section is going to be general characteristics of delivering a good speech. The fourth section is going to be application to an actual speech. The fifth section is just going to be about keeping your ethos, even if you're behind and losing a debate. And the last section is going to be about ways to actually improve your speaking. So I know you guys are tired, but like poll in debate, who thinks that speaking does not really matter for winning? You guys can just like raise your hand or like put a thumb up. And then who thinks speaking is important to winning a debate? Okay, yeah. I think, well, TLDR, I guess that for people who say that speaking doesn't matter, I think they are not right about that. Good speaking and ethos boosts your chance of winning. This is something that I've observed and even had firsthand experience with, because in rounds, I know I've spoken well, and I know that the other times I've spoken poorly, I would get higher speaker points and the judge would decide the debate faster. Yes, there are some debates where it is very clear, like who has won the debate because of big mistakes. But in other debates, when both sides have made some mistakes, but no one has done anything glaringly incorrect, the way you speak becomes super, super important. It acts as a tiebreaker for elimination rounds, because when you have the same number of wins as another team at a tournament, if you have higher speaker points, you're automatically going to be the higher seed than them, which means that you will get more favorable opponents. So if there's 16 teams and, the 1, 2, and 3 seed have the same number of wins, the 1 seed will be decided on speaker points, and they will debate the 16 seed, which is a lower seed, also decided on speaker points, but they will be debating an easier opponent in like the later rounds of a tournament, which makes it easier for them to win the tournament itself, right? Because if you have, an easier opponent, you have more of a chance of advancing further into the tournament itself. It matters outside of just being a tiebreaker, because in debate, sometimes you are going to be advocating for ridiculous things. You might argue that like nuclear war is good. You might argue that climate change is good. And in order to actually make a judge vote for you, you need to be persuasive and make them almost believe you or give them a reason to vote for you. If you sound passionate and persuasive, you will be able to do that, and you don't sound as crazy for advocating for something that is blatantly false, right? Because debate is all about sometimes advocating for things that are not necessarily the truest things, but you make them seem true through your speaking. It gives you credibility. But if you are talking unsurely, monotonously, or quietly, even if what you are saying is correct, the judge doesn't really think you're going to be credible and has no reason to believe you in the debate. Sometimes if both teams are doing well in the debate, the judge will automatically have this bias towards voting for the team that just sounds better. Most of the time this doesn't happen, but they feel more comfortable voting for the team that sounded better, because there's this perception that that team is better, even if that's not necessarily true. I alluded to this in this debate, I alluded to this earlier. in when I was talking, but judges will vote for the team that is best at instructing them on how they should vote. And that comes from your speaking, right? So the judge, this is a term more formally known as like judge instruction, which you guys don't really need to know, but it's tied to ethos and speaking to instruct the judge or tell them why you should win the debate. You have to speak emphatically and outline a reason for why you should win. The actual reason itself doesn't always need to be the best, but if you can use your speaking to outline and show them like, hey, this is why we are winning this debate, it shows to them that yes, like there's a better reason to vote for you as opposed to, not outlining that reason or not speaking well. This comes in a few ways. Like sometimes people in their rebuttals will say things like, it's a clear ballot for us when the other team has dropped blah, 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 or has not answered blah, blah, blah thing. Also, last thing, it helps you connect with the judge if you're a good speaker. Judges appreciate good speakers and are more engaged and compelled to listen if you are a good speaker. Gonna be totally honest, there's a lot of judges who are like super tired, will wake up and will not want to be there, but you have to give them a reason to be there, whether that's, something in your speaking or something about your demeanor that, makes them want to listen to you. Okay. We're gonna now talk about some ways to boost your ethos outside of just speaking. Does anyone have any questions about the beginning though? Okay, I'm gonna keep going then. But before we get into the actual, speeches of debate, it's important to know like how you can do what other things you can do outside of just speaking, because judges are paying attention the entire debate and it's not just about when you're doing your speech. First thing is cross-ex. Not spending a lot of time here because I know that somebody else is going to be covering this lecture later in a couple days, but you should always, I put some do's and don'ts, you should always stand up during cross-ex and make eye contact with the judge. A lot of people think that in cross-ex, they should be looking at their opponents because cross-ex is with, your opponent and you're going to be speaking to them, but you should always be looking at the judge because the judge is the most important person in the debate. You should not be sitting either. But the other thing is that when you should find your own style when you're doing cross-ex. There's a lot of different ways people do this. People do this using sarcasm and satire. There's some people that know a lot of facts about debate and know their evidence super well. So that's how they will show their identity or show their personality in cross-ex. I remember there was like a debater last year who would come up to the podium without their computer at all and just close their computer during cross-ex to be able to show that they knew their evidence super well, and they would just be talking and referring to their evidence by author name without looking at their computer. If you're funny, you can use that to make fun of your opponents and their arguments in a lighthearted way. Be careful of this one because some judges think that like joking around can just be considered mean. So only do this if you're actually funny and can make like a lighthearted joke. Other people are just passionate and very intense in cross-ex. They will put pressure on their opponent's answers, and they will, not just put pressure on them, but they won't let them get away with just a simple explanation. They will ask follow-ups to their opponent's answers. I was definitely more of the passionate / intense one. I don't think I was super funny in my cross-exes, but that's okay. You should do what works for you. Now, things that you shouldn't do in cross-ex: do not be the person that asks your opponents where they left off or for a marked copy in the debate. Do people know what that means, like a marked copy? A marked copy is basically at the end of your speech or at the end of your opponent's speech. Sometimes they won't read through all of their evidence, or sometimes they won't read all of the highlighted portions. And it's asking them to basically send another version of their speech where they, with their cursor or with the enter button, they will specifically mark where they left off in their evidence. Judges do not like that because it looks like you were not paying attention. questions about just cross-ex. We're going to, if there's not questions, you can also just like in the chat, if you're not super comfortable sharing out loud, totally get it. You can also just put in the chat a question that you have and I can answer it for everyone. But we're gonna watch a quick cross-ex that I think is very good. Hold on, let me just get out of this and let me know how this sounds. The content of the cross-ex does not really matter of the video I'm about to show you guys. It's more about how this debater, how she is able to convey, you know, such power and ethos within her cross-ex. There are specific things that she does super, super well. So we're gonna watch this right here. Let me know if the audio works and you all can hear it.
Yeah. Resolution at the top. If we want the US
Can people hear it?
secure cooperation with NATO to win the debate.
No, the one I see is about playing with linguistic dexterity and how we relate to language in the resolution.
Does the AF defend federal government action?
The AF does not fiat federal government.
Okay, if we win security cooperation with NATO, would destroy the alliance's cohesion, do we win the debate?
Again, the AF does not fiat.
Okay, the second part, which is like the resolution backwards, why did you read it backwards?
Well, that's a demonstration of the one easy stricture hermeneutics, which plays and reorients and disorients.
Why is every tag and text of the card not backwards?
Well, to some extent, communication is good, but we can
Okay, to some extent, communication is good.
and
Where do you draw the
practices
line?
like the resolution that are actually
Yeah, why do you draw the line? Why is the advocacy the only place where you have mirror text but nowhere else?
Well, again, we've disordered the singular imposition of the resolution. Just because we didn't disorder every word in the 1AC does not mean we somehow haven't performed Trickster hermeneutics. Regardless, it's also an endorsement of Trickster hermeneutics as a broader strategy.
Why does voting AF for 2 non-native people do anything to distort the resolution?
Well, the censor does not think that Trickster hermeneutics should solely be deployed by native people. In parts of his book, he speaks to things like the Chinese Monkey King and Brer Rabbit, who are all forms of non-native existence, which can contribute to the tricksterism of current paradigms of settlerism. The idea that non-native people should just not engage with the question of Trickster hermeneutics results in exclusion and results in echo chambers, which results in worse, more hostile decision-making.
Sure. The Ganser evidence describes alternative versions of academic writing. Why is the AF a form of another version of academic writing?
Well, debate is an academic space, an academic site of exchange. The 1AC's produced
the 1AC has not produced new scholarship. Confused why you have met the threshold for solvency as per 1AC evidence.
What about the 1AC's not produced new scholarship?
The 1AC has not written new articles. You've proposed the resolution backwards. Why is that new scholarship?
I don't understand what you're saying.
I don't understand your answer. Why have you produced new scholarship?
We've read a new 1AC and a new format for new judges, new individuals. That's
reading
a
new
production
1AC
of a new
is sufficient. Sure. Morrison evidence, what quotidian violence has occurred?
Well, we've said the misapprehension of native signs and signifiers and the reduction of
which
individuals
native
to
people
a
have been
bankable
harmed in the
simulation.
context of this round?
This round?
Yeah.
The 1NC, the debate hasn't happened yet. We've made a unique system about debate.
Okay, so to clarify, before the 1NC, AF solved zero violence because zero violence has occurred. That's correct.
We said the reduction of native individuals to a bankable simulation, that is bad. We've made a unique claim about debate.
Where do you have any evidence about debate in the 1AC?
We've applied scholars outside.
Okay, applied scholarship, not about debate, in debate. Why does voting AF solve any quotidian violence?
You understand your argument would say that every card from an academic ever would have to be in debate. That's a completely unreasonable.
Well, you've made a solvency claim about violence in debate. I just don't understand why you solved it.
Again, we've said we've counter-simulated and engaged in a practice of Trickster hermeneutics. That's easy solved.
Why does voting AF resolve any quotidian violence that has occurred?
Again, it disorders business as usual. It challenges current practices of settlerism. That is good.
Okay, that's probably good. We don't need to watch. Oops, we don't need to watch all of it. But what did people think about that? What were some of the things that she did that were good about her cross-ex? You guys can just shout it out, put it in the chat either way.
I thought it was like pretty cool how she just like she's really like assertive with like the way that she was talking. And like she wasn't speaking over her opponent in any way, but she just like respectfully just like asserted like her opinion and just like kept going with like what she wanted to say.
Definitely. She kept her, assertiveness, but she also kept pressing them on something that she knows she wasn't getting a good answer from them about. And she was like, very passionate about sticking with the line of thinking that she was on. What do other people think? If not, we can move on and we can come back to cross-ex at the end, talk more about it there. But other things about the pre-round and how to ways to boost your ethos, or when I say pre-round, before the round, this is ways that will boost your ethos with a judge. You should be in the room 10 minutes before the round and ready to go 2 to 3 minutes before the debate starts. That means that like all of your personal needs are taken care of, like, you know, getting water, going to the bathroom. If you're affirmative, you have the email chain set up. Have you guys talked about an email chain and how that works? So at the beginning of the debate, the affirmative side is the one that has to set up an email listing with their opponents on it, the judge on it, and you send your speech. So if you are affirmative and delivering the first affirmative speech that happens, you need to make sure that 2 to 3 minutes before, you know, the email has been set up with your attached document and has been sent out, unless you are reading a new affirmative, which we don't have to talk about, but the rules are a little bit different for. But, you know, if you're delivering the first speech, email chain should be set up. Your debate stand should be set up as well with a timer on it. You should always be standing for your speech. For your speeches, you should not be giving a speech sitting down, because that also signals, that is also a sign of credibility and ethos. Now, the last thing that kind of matters outside of, you know, just outside of being ready is flowing. Have you all talked about flowing? Kind of, okay. Or yes. Well, just to clarify or go over, flowing is just another way of taking notes in an organized way. It's where you take an 8.5 by 14 piece of paper and divide it into columns and take notes of the different speeches in the separate columns. So like the first affirmative speech gets its own column, the first negative speech gets its own column, the second affirmative speech gets its own column, and so forth for the debate going on. Flowing is a super, super, super big indicator of credibility towards a judge. The judges really care about flowing. They want to see you flowing because it shows them that you're paying attention and actually locked into the activity, as opposed to just trying to prep your own speech or doing something else while the other people are talking. It shows like just you're engaged. Any questions about this section? Now we're actually going to get into the third section, which is about characteristics of delivering a good speech. Any questions? Okay. Before like I show what I wrote, what do you guys think are just some like general characteristics, even outside of debate, of like delivering a good speech? Like what should you have?
Being confident, showing that you know what you're talking about. You're not unsure, you're not mumbling, you're loud, you're clear, but you're not making fun of other people while you do it. You're respecting their opinions.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with like all of those. Anybody else? Well, okay. I think you basically hit the nail on the head, and those were like the characteristics that I had put down. These are like some of the ones that I had. Confidence, you should show, like you said, you should show that you're not afraid to be there. Everyone gets nervous, but in your speech, you need to show your power as a person and exude that you know what you're talking about, because you want to show that you're assertive and you want to be very sure about what you're talking about. I think emphasis is something that is sometimes undercovered and people don't realize how important it is. You need to emphasize different words and phrases that are in your evidence and that show the power. So things like war, violence, extinction, things like that, that's going to be those words in your evidence. You should put emphasis on them when you're speaking so the judge knows that they're important, because otherwise the importance of what you're talking about is not going to get through. So especially if you're talking about something like climate change, nuclear war, those are the places where that emphasis should be put. It's also especially important because sometimes debaters will re-highlight their opponent's evidence. So if your opponent has highlighted evidence to make it seem like it says something, often you can re-highlight it to show that what they're saying that it says is not actually true and it makes a different conclusion. You should put emphasis on that because that will show the judge that you know, you're taking their evidence very seriously. You are paying attention to the details and the intricacies of their evidence as well. Clarity, pretty self-explanatory. You're never going to get the message across if you aren't clear. Some people, there's a stereotype of policy debate where, you know, it's just a fast talking activity. But, you know, if you're not being clear about what you're saying, it's not going to be good regardless of how fast you speak. Organization, people do this differently, but it is really, really important for you to number your arguments in some ways. Especially for the 2AC. That way that like when you are skipping around in your 2AC, oh, does everyone know what I mean when I say 2AC? Yeah, okay. That way when you're skipping around in your 2AC, if you use numbers, judges can follow along and they don't really mind you skipping around. You can also use letters for sub-arguments that you make. So like if you have the first argument that you make, if there's kind of two, you know, related subpoints to that, you can do like A and B, or you could do like Roman numerals, however you want to number it, but it's helpful for that. Different rhythms / tones. When you're reading tags and which is like, you know, when you have a piece of evidence or a card, which is just a piece of evidence, the tag or the sentence that's at the top of the piece of evidence that you read as a description or outline for the actual piece of evidence, you should vary how you're speaking there compared to how you're reading your piece of evidence. The way most people do it is most people are very clear and slow down on the little description part of the piece of evidence. And then when they actually get to the piece of evidence, they will read it faster. They will read it kind of a little bit more unclearly. But so you should vary that because judges can get bored and they can get bored pretty quickly, unfortunately. So you want to signal to them that you are passionate through having different variants of the ways that you talk. It'll also make you look more credible. Then breathing, just make sure that you're not doing a super gaspy breathe. I know this sounds silly, but it will be, it makes a difference because it makes a difference for your speaking. Your own style and power. We kind of talked about this with cross-ex. You are kind of making an identity for yourself when you're giving speeches in debate. Like judges will remember you for being a certain person and you're creating a persona in the way that you speak, which adds to your credibility. So, you know, you can use the different styles that I talked about in cross-ex to help you out. Some people like to add funny metaphors in their speeches that make judges laugh. Some people just are very good about looking up in their speech and also, you know, putting emphasis. Some people slow down on certain parts and are able to look at the judge doing that. So, you know, make sure you have something like that shows who you are in the debate and who you are as a speaker. Connection with the judge. We kind of talked about this already, looking up in your speech, making direct eye contact, slowing down on sentences. Body language, make sure this also matters for delivering a good speech. You want to make sure you're like calm, collected, but also that, you know, you're not super stiff because that will just show that you're nervous. This whole activity is about faking it till you make it because most people are nervous in this activity, but it's just about showing that you're not nervous to make the judge believe that, you know, you are super calm and confident where you are. Questions about those general characteristics. I know that was a lot, but this will make a lot more sense also when I talk about application to the actual speeches. Any questions about that? Okay. I am going to then move into this section. I know this is a lot of text. Don't worry about all of it. Honestly, if you just kind of listen to what I'm saying, that's okay. I'm going to be talking about just the different speeches that I think your speaking really, really matters and what elements matter the most in it. And then we're going to watch a speech, just like the first 20-30 seconds of it, the same debater, how she executes the beginning of her speeches. Starting with the 2AC or the second affirmative constructive speech, I kind of talked about this already, but this speech is usually people are running low on time just because there's so many things you have to answer. in the speech. So being assertive on every, disadvantage, every counter plan, or every piece of offense that the other team has read, even if you can't cover everything, is very, very important. So I know a lot of teams where the second an affirmative speaker, they will know that they're not going to be able to make every argument that they want to, but the arguments that they do make, they will sound very, impassioned about it, and they will provide a reason to the judge within their speech about why they're only making those arguments. So if you have a disadvantage, let's say, and you are making an argument about, the bill will not pass, you can also say explicitly to the judge, being like, if we win that the bill does not pass, that means blah, blah, blah thing does not matter, for like what you might not be covering. Organization matters a lot. Not going to talk about that right here because I already talked about numbering and how judges appreciate that. The other thing that matters is case line by line. Do people know what I mean when I say line by line? I'm going to assume maybe not. So I will just talk about that for a couple minutes. Line by line is basically the idea of going, when you think about when you have a piece of paper and when you make notes, going down the line of your notes and addressing each argument that your opponent has made. So in the 2AC, when you're answering your case, because the speech before you will have made arguments about the case and why it's wrong, the 2AC will go down every single note of the notes that they've taken and be like, they say X thing, and then they'll be like, no, that's wrong because blah, blah, blah. That is like the correct method for, line by line, because you're just going down the line for each of their arguments. And judges really appreciate that because it keeps you organized, but they also know that, wow, this person was paying attention. They got every single argument and are making a counterpoint to that. That's the 2AC. But also line by line is something that you should do in every speech. But it matters more for the 2AC, especially because that is the first speech where you're actually making counter arguments as opposed to just reading evidence. The 2NC is important. Speaking matters because it's where you're condensing the debate and making strategic decisions about where to condense. You want to believe since you are condensing the debate in this speech, you want the judge to believe that you are ahead on this part of the debate, and that's why you decided to narrow it down. Line by line is a really, really important. I'm not going to explain the 2AC1 method because I think that if you guys get good at doing the they say blah like method and using that method of they say plus no, that's wrong, plus your explanation for why their argument is wrong, you're gonna be very good. The 2NC is also a fun speech, really where you get to show your style and what kind of debater you are, because this is the first speech. You kind of have 8 minutes of time to capitalize on one thing that you might be really, really good at. And that's, also how you gain ethos. 1AR, this is the first affirmative rebuttal. I'm skipping the first negative rebuttal just because I think it's a speech where you can get away with having less ethos. The 1AR is a speech where you cannot drop anything or, that's crucial. But a lot of times this is where you show your ethos because you will have to condense the debate further. You are answering 13 minutes of negative constructive speech time into a 5-minute rebuttal, which is very hard to do. So people will normally be explicit and be like, I'm only going to make these 2 arguments because if I win X thing, that means Y thing does not matter. And you would plug in the X and the Y. Efficiency matters a lot. This is where you use the line by line method. You want to be using that, but you also have to be doing it quickly in a way that you can get through all of the arguments, since this is such a time pressed speech. The 2NR and the 2AR, this is where what I was talking about, judge instruction, that's something that really matters. That is how you build your good speaking and ethos, because you're outlining to the judge why you think you're winning the debate. And the other thing that you can do, especially in the 2NR, is that you can say what you think you're losing. You can say, we are winning this debate because blah, 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 blah. Even if you think we are behind on X thing, it doesn't matter because blah, 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 blah. Now, the reason itself does not have to be that good. You know, you could have a really, really like stupid reason for why you are winning the debate, or why the thing that your opponent said does not really matter, even if you are losing it, because that just shows the judge that, hey, you are able to identify what you are losing, but this is why you are still able to maintain a calm composure and, you know, be ahead in the debate. 2NR is you need to close all the doors since you don't have the last speech. This is where you use your voice to blow up mistakes the 1AR has made, even if they are small. The 2AR is a little bit different because you don't necessarily need to close doors as much as the 2NR since you have the last speech. This is really just about sounding good, and that means slowing down on portions of the debate where you think it's important and where you think the judge is going to look. When the judge is giving their decision and, like, you know, reveals who won, you want them to start, you know, the decision with, I voted this way because I think the affirmative is ahead on X thing. And you want in your last speech, if you are affirmative, to be able to outline X thing so the judge just recites that back to you. You honestly have the most power in the debate if you are the second affirmative speaker, because you have the last speech and you get to be the most assertive. Sometimes you can gaslight your opponents if you think if you can gaslight your judge into believing that your opponents are wrong, even if they might be right about something, just because your opponent doesn't get another speech. We're gonna watch the first like 20 seconds of the same debater giving a speech. We're only going to watch her judge instruction. The content does not matter, but just listen to how assertive she is about why she is winning this debate. And she specifically, I should have said this, when your opponent drops things and does not answer them in the speech before you, that should be one of the first things you bring up. So this team, there's an argument called NUAF's bad. This team dropped the argument NUAF's bad, and she specifically, like at the top of her speech, you will see, like says that. So we're just gonna listen to the first like 30, 40 seconds.
Cohesion.
Can people hear it? Cool.
Wait, sorry.
Concon JCS consensus permitting reform?
Yeah. Sorry.
Cool. Okay.
I'll skip ahead a little.
I have a case. We have a 100 minutes.
Oops, there we go.
Are you all ready?
Go for it.
1AR Trump's US bad. It's explicitly flagged as a voting issue. The 1AR does not go to this page and does not answer us. This is a sentence of the TOC. They cannot come back. US are bad. They Detroit in-depth debate are terrible for clash. They make it impossible to engage because the negative cannot predict their opponent's arguments or train clash shallow roots. The only intrinsic value debate clash is good. The TOC did the workforce on conditionality. Argumentation is the only negative from debate. The only thing they should be required to do is disclose 30 minutes before the round. I know you don't want to end someone's career on this, but would you rather end the career of a team that dropped her or the team that actually knows how to flow? Let's be real, they deserve to go out with the taste of their own medicine. This is also justification for every theory and competition argument the 2AR will stand up and make because they made part impossible because they broke the new app. Must we reject the team? The dimension's already been done in the start. I just like concede on the 1AR. JCS.
Okay, we're just gonna watch that part of this, but basically I know she it was speaking very fast and maybe you guys are not super used to that yet, but basically the point is that at the top she was like, they've dropped this argument, and then she makes it I don't know if you caught it, but she makes it a justification for other arguments that she's going to make later. So she said it's a justification for every theory or competition argument. You don't need to really know what that is right now, but it's good. She was explicit about like, hey, them dropping this thing implicates the rest of the debate and how you should view the rest of the debate. So she was very, very good about that. Other thing she was very good at is that, you know, outlining how even if this is a silly argument, because sometimes the mistakes that the other team will make, they're silly, but she explains why they're super important and why they matter. Questions about that? Okay, this is just something that I thought of. It's not as important, but I thought keeping ethos / when you're losing / when you're behind in the debate is useful, just because when I started debate, I kind of would always lose my confidence in my speaking just because I was like, oh, I'm already going to get beat. Why does it matter if I'm like how I speak? But the worst thing that you can do is show your uncertainty. And this sounds like you guys probably are thinking like, oh, I know that already. Like, obviously you have to be confident, but it's harder than it sometimes looks, because just because you feel behind one doesn't mean that's what the judge thinks. You have to keep faking it. You have to keep being assertive, be calm. You should act like nothing has happened, even if there's a big mistake that you have made, because otherwise, if you start acting like something big has happened, the judge can overcorrect in their mind and think that maybe there actually is something big, even if they haven't really thought about you being behind in the debate. Because most of the time we think that we have done something super wrong in the debate, when actually things end up being totally fine. Maintain the same sense of confidence, but this also means don't get super overly aggressive with your opponents. Judges will see it as an act of like nervousness, or see it as you trying to like get back into the debate. The other thing that is really good that you can do to show your speaking ability is judge instruction. We talked about this earlier, but if you know you're behind, you can explicitly point out why you might be behind over that argument or over that thing. You want to look at the judge straight in the eye when you're saying this and explain why it does not matter. It shows your credibility to the judge, because they'll be able to maybe think about it the way that you are explaining it, but also see that why maybe what you messed up on is not really a big deal, when there's a whole debate that has happened and there's other things that you have done well on and they have messed up. I know that's quick, but I just wanted to point it out there, because a lot of times people think that when they're going to lose the debate, they should just stop having good speaking or ethos. Your job is to always make the judge try to believe that you are winning the debate. Even if you don't think so, you are trying to persuade them, which means you also have to tell yourself in a way that you are winning the debate, so you're able to have that same level of confidence, etc. These are just a couple things I put together for how to improve your speaking. Rebuttal redos. So when you guys actually start getting into debate and giving speeches, redoing the speeches, not just your rebuttals. I should have put your constructive speeches as well. It forces you to have the repetition of crafting your argument/speech together. You can practice how you're giving the beginning of your speech, because the beginning of your rebuttal is like what's super important for ethos and speaking. It's what we talked about, instructing the judge. It's about slowing down. It's about identifying what you think you're winning and losing. But giving more and more of those speeches will make you a better speaker, because you'll be able to identify better and also put emphasis, which is what we talked about. It also like builds up practice giving those, even if you're losing. Speaking drills, not a waste or dumb, I promise. If you sound good talking fast, you are inevitably going to get higher speaker points, which, as I said at the beginning, boosts your chance of winning the tournament. These are some of the drills that you can do. So if you have a file, or if you have some of your evidence, you can, use your evidence to do 45 seconds of normally speaking, 45 seconds of over enunciating, 45 seconds about putting the word watermelon in between each word as you spread. This sounds super dumb, but I promise you it makes you a better speaker. 45 seconds of speaking as fast as you can. 45 seconds, some people do a pen in your mouth and drill, where you practice, the vowels, consonant shapes, and then 45 seconds reading your evidence backwards. Last thing you could do is do mini debates with a judge. So you could have an opponent and do a smaller version of debate, but have someone judge your debate, because it simulates having an actual debate in front of people. These are a couple of YouTube channels if you want to get better at speaking. I should have actually put what the channel is called, but the first channel is called Lhasa Debate, and the second channel is called Policy Debate. The second channel is called Debate Legends Central. These are where you can watch some really good debates. If you want to get some more experience, you can see some very good speakers. And I would highly recommend, if you're into policy debate and want to get better at the activity, checking out both these channels. Do you guys have any questions? This is also my email. If you have any questions that you want to email me later, if you think of anything, but are there any questions I can answer right now? Okay, if not, totally fine. I will turn it back over to Eva and Ravi, but thank you everyone for listening and being here. Oh wait, sorry, let me check. Let me stop sharing and check the